The nation just witnessed a political earthquake. In a stunning live broadcast, Boris Johnson shattered all expectations by demanding the immediate resignation of Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The atmosphere was electric, the tension unbearable as Johnson tore into Starmer with ruthless precision. Starmer, usually composed and confident, was left speechless, humiliated before millions. This explosive confrontation wasn't just another political clash, it was a public declaration of war, shaking the very foundations of Britain's leadership. What led to this unprecedented moment, and what does it mean for the future of the UK? The answers lie in the details of this breathtaking showdown. The stage was set for a moment no one saw coming. Boris Johnson, a figure as controversial as he is charismatic, stepped up with a mission that sent shockwaves through the political landscape. For months, tension had simmered beneath the surface, but Johnson's live demand for Prime Minister Keir Starmer's resignation ignited a blaze of political fury that no one could ignore. Johnson's tone was steady but filled with unmistakable intensity. This was not a mere political jab, it was a full-scale assault on Starmer's leadership and credibility. Johnson opened by dissecting the failures he attributed to Starmer's tenure, painting a grim picture of a government adrift, economic struggles, a faltering response to public crises, and a perceived disconnect from the needs of everyday Britons formed the core of Johnson's indictment. His words cut deep, resonating with a public weary of broken promises and political stagnation. Every sentence was carefully crafted to dismantle Starmer's image as the calm, capable leader Britain needed. Johnson wasn't holding back, exposing raw nerves and revealing a deep well of frustration that had clearly been building behind the scenes. Starmer's reaction was immediate but visibly shaken. His usual poise cracked as the accusations piled up, and for the first time in months, the Prime Minister appeared vulnerable under the spotlight. Attempts to defend his record seemed faltering and overshadowed by Johnson's relentless pressure. The live audience, as well as viewers at home, could sense the growing imbalance in the exchange. What began as a debate quickly turned into a public trial, with Johnson acting as both prosecutor and executioner. The drama was heightened by the sheer unpredictability of the moment. Johnson's decision to call for resignation live on air was a bold, risky move that defied political convention. It shattered the usual protocols of parliamentary politics and thrust the nation into uncharted territory. The gravity of the demand echoed beyond the studio, sending ripples through Westminster and stirring intense speculation about the future of Starmer's premiership. Political analysts and insiders were left scrambling to make sense of this unprecedented challenge. Was this a genuine push for accountability or a strategic gambit aimed at destabilising the opposition? Behind the scenes, the implications were profound. Johnson's public challenge forced Starmer's allies into damage control mode, scrambling to shore up support and contain the fallout. Meanwhile, Johnson's supporters saw this as a rallying cry, a moment to reclaim lost ground and shift the balance of power. The political landscape was shifting fast and the tension was palpable, not just in the halls of power, but across the country. Ordinary citizens watching at home found themselves caught in the middle of a high-stakes drama that felt both surreal and deeply consequential. As Johnson's words echoed in the studio, one thing was clear. This was not just a fight between two politicians. It was a clash of visions for the future of Britain, a battle for control over the nation's destiny. The stakes couldn't have been higher, and the country was left to wonder, how will Starmer respond? Will he survive this political onslaught, or is this the beginning of the end, and for his leadership? The answers to these questions would unfold in the tense hours and days to come. But one fact was undeniable. Britain had just witnessed a political moment that will be remembered for years. The moment Johnson demanded Starmer's resignation, the atmosphere shifted dramatically, not just in the studio, but across the political landscape. Starmer, who had long been seen as the steady, unshakable face of the Labour Party, suddenly appeared vulnerable and exposed. His attempts to defend his leadership were met with growing scepticism both inside Parliament and among the public. Johnson's words weren't just an attack, they were a rallying cry that ignited long-simmering doubts about Starmer's ability to lead during a time of mounting crises. Johnson methodically tore into Starmer's record, highlighting what he called a series of catastrophic failures. The economy, Johnson claimed, was unravelling under Starmer's watch, with inflation soaring and everyday families struggling to make ends meet. The NHS was strained, waiting times at breaking point, and public trust in government had plummeted. Foreign policy missteps and a lack of clear direction only added fuel to the fire. Johnson's rhetoric struck a chord with many who felt betrayed by promises left unfulfilled and leadership that seemed disconnected from the realities facing ordinary citizens. Starmer's defences began to falter under the relentless pressure. Each attempt to counter Johnson's accusations seemed rehearsed, lacking the conviction needed to restore confidence. The usual calm that defined Starmer's public persona gave way to moments of hesitation and frustration. Johnson capitalised on this, pushing harder, refusing to allow Starmer room to recover. The former Prime Minister's strategy was clear. This was no mere debate, but a calculated effort to publicly humiliate Starmer and force his hand. The ripple effects were immediate and widespread. Social media exploded as clips of the confrontation went viral, with millions weighing in on the showdown. Supporters of Johnson hailed the moment as a long overdue reckoning, while Starmer's allies struggled to maintain a united front amid rising criticism. Political commentators described the scene as unprecedented, historic, and a turning point in British politics. The public mood grew tense, divided between those demanding change and others warning of the dangers of instability during uncertain times. Inside Westminster, the consequences were just as dramatic. Starmer's leadership was suddenly under intense scrutiny, with murmurs of dissent growing louder among Labour MPs. Some began to question whether he could weather the storm or if his premiership was approaching a breaking point. Johnson's bold move had unsettled the delicate balance of power, threatening to fracture the opposition party at a crucial moment. Meanwhile, government officials and party strategists scrambled to assess the fallout, knowing that the next days would be critical in determining Starmer's fate. Johnson, meanwhile, remained a figure both admired and reviled. His dramatic move on live television had thrust him back into the spotlight, reminding the nation of his ability to command attention and disrupt the political status quo. Some praised his courage for speaking truth to power, while others accused him of recklessness, endangering national stability for personal gain. Regardless of opinion, Johnson had succeeded in altering the political landscape, forcing a confrontation that would dominate headlines and discussions for weeks, if not months. This moment marked a turning point in British politics, a public clash that exposed deep fractures within the ruling party and underscored the fragility of political power. For viewers and citizens alike, it was a reminder that no leader, no matter how confident, is immune to challenge. The unfolding drama was far from over, and the nation held its breath, waiting to see if Starmer could recover or if Boris Johnson had delivered a blow from which the Prime Minister could never fully recover. The reverberations of Johnson's demand continued to shake the foundations of British politics. Within government circles, a sense of unease settled like a heavy fog. Starmer's closest allies were forced into a defensive posture, urgently strategising how to contain the damage and restore confidence in their leader. Public appearances were scrutinised like never before. Every word uttered weighed against the backdrop of Johnson's blistering challenge. Yet despite their efforts, the cracks in Starmer's armour seemed to deepen with each passing day. At the same time, Johnson's dramatic move energised his supporters. Many saw that the former Prime Minister's attack as a bold stand against what they perceived as ineffective leadership. His call for resignation was framed as an act of patriotism, a necessary wake-up call to a government that had lost its way. This narrative gained traction not just among politicians, but with a growing segment of the public, frustrated by economic hardship, soaring costs, and political uncertainty. Johnson's voice became the rallying point for those demanding change, even as others warned of the risks such instability could bring. The Labour Party, caught in the eye of this storm, faced an existential dilemma. The internal divisions sparked by Johnson's public demand threatened to escalate into open rebellion. Some MPs quietly began plotting alternatives, eyeing potential leadership contenders ready to step forward if Starmer faltered. The possibility of a leadership challenge loomed large, casting a shadow over the party's future and its ability to present a united front against the government. Meanwhile, the Conservative Party watched closely, weighing how to capitalise on the turmoil within Labour without appearing opportunistic. Outside the political elite, ordinary citizens felt the impact too. Confidence in the government had already been shaky, and Johnson's explosive attack only deepened the uncertainty. Questions about stability, governance and the country's direction dominated everyday conversations. Many wondered whether Britain was heading toward a period of prolonged political instability, a scenario that could affect everything from the economy to international relations. The nation was at a crossroads, with the events of this live confrontation acting as a catalyst for a broader reckoning. For Starmer, the challenge was daunting. He needed to rebuild trust, not just within his party, but across the electorate. His response in the coming weeks would be crucial. Would he double down on his vision and fight to hold on to power? Or would the pressure prove too great, forcing him to step aside? The coming days promised to be decisive as the political drama intensified and every move was scrutinised in the court of public opinion. Meanwhile, Boris Johnson's bold gamble had transformed him from a sidelined figure into a central player once more. Whether this newfound prominence would lead to a political comeback or backfire spectacularly remained uncertain. But one thing was clear: by demanding Starmer's resignation live on TV, Johnson had rewritten the rules of engagement, turning a political rivalry into a national spectacle that would define British politics for months to come. As the fallout from Johnson's live demand continued to unfold, the political pressure cooker reached new heights. Starmer's leadership was no longer just a matter of public debate. It had become a crisis of confidence that threatened to engulf the entire Labour Party. Allies who once stood firmly by his side began to waver, their loyalty tested by the harsh reality of Johnson's accusations and the swelling public discontent. In private meetings, whispers of leadership change grew louder, signalling a fracture that could soon become impossible to contain. Johnson's explosive challenge had also opened a Pandora's box for the opposition. His move emboldened critics within Labour who had long been frustrated with Starmer's cautious approach and perceived lack of decisive action. Now, those critics had a rallying point and momentum, igniting a power struggle beneath the surface that many feared could escalate into a full-blown leadership battle. The party faced a critical choice: rally behind Starmer in the face of adversity, or begin the painful process of replacing their leader in a bid to regain public trust. Beyond the party walls, the British public was deeply divided. The economic hardships of recent years, rising inflation, cost of living crises, and stretched public services had already sown widespread dissatisfaction. Johnson's televised demand gave voice to that frustration in a way that many found electrifying. For some, Johnson emerged as a truth teller, bravely exposing a government failing to meet its promises. For others, it was a reckless act, risking political stability at a time when steady leadership was desperately needed. Meanwhile, political analysts began outlining potential futures. Could Johnson's bold move lead to a quick leadership contest? Might Starmer resign under pressure, triggering a scramble among Labour hopefuls? Or could Starmer weather the storm, rebuild his image and come back stronger? These scenarios played out in newsrooms and strategy sessions alike, highlighting the high stakes and uncertainty gripping the nation. International observers watched closely too. Britain's political stability has always been a crucial factor on the global stage, influencing everything from trade to diplomacy. A leadership crisis could signal vulnerability at a time when the world faces numerous challenges, from economic upheaval to geopolitical tensions. Johnson's demand wasn't just a domestic issue. It had the potential to reshape Britain's role in an increasingly complex international environment. As the dust settled on this historic confrontation, one undeniable truth emerged. British politics had entered a new, unpredictable phase. The live broadcast was more than a moment. It was a catalyst that exposed raw nerves, unleashed long-suppressed tensions, and set the stage for a dramatic showdown that could redefine the country's future. The coming days and weeks promised uncertainty, power struggles, and a political battle that would captivate the nation and keep everyone on edge. Johnson's timing couldn't have been more strategic. Coming just after a series of disappointing poll results and internal party unrest, his demand exploited the moment of vulnerability with surgical precision. It was a high-stakes gamble that forced every player in British politics to react, recalibrate and reconsider what the future might hold. The drama wasn't confined to the TV studio, it spilled into the streets, the Parliament chambers and the hearts of voters across the nation. The live broadcast became a symbol of a deep political crisis, a public spectacle where reputations were at stake, alliances tested, and the very future of Britain's leadership hung in the balance. As the dust settled, one question dominated every conversation. Could Starmer survive this brutal challenge, or had Boris Johnson delivered the final devastating blow? The shockwaves from Johnson's demand echoed far beyond the studio. Within hours, the political world was buzzing with speculation and panic. For months, doubts about Starmer's leadership had been whispered behind closed doors, but Johnson's public call for resignation shattered any illusions of solidarity. The Labour Party found itself on the edge of a crisis, forced to confront an unthinkable scenario, the possible collapse of their leader's authority. Inside Westminster, frantic meetings took place as MPs and advisers scrambled to gauge the mood within their ranks. Some expressed quiet relief, believing a change in leadership might be necessary to save the party's future. Others remained loyal to Starmer, warning against giving in to pressure from a political rival whose motives were questioned by many. The divisions became more visible, a fault line threatening to split the party at its core. The usual calm of Westminster was replaced by tense whispers, hurried phone calls and urgent strategy sessions as the fallout deepened. The British public, meanwhile, watched with a mixture of disbelief and fascination. Johnson's explosive words had captured the nation's attention like never before. On social media, millions debated the confrontation, sharing clips and opinions with furious intensity. Supporters of Johnson hailed the moment as a long overdue reckoning, a necessary shake-up to a government many saw as stagnant. Conversely, Starmer's followers accused Johnson of opportunism, suggesting his challenge was less about patriotism and more about reviving his own fading influence. The political arena had transformed into a battleground of narratives with the stakes higher than ever. Amid the chaos, Starmer faced mounting pressure not just from his opponents but from within. Calls for him to step down grew louder and the once solid support base began to waver. For many in his party, the fear was clear. If Starmer couldn't contain the crisis sparked by Johnson's live attack, the Labour Party risked fracturing beyond repair. The leadership question had shifted from speculation to urgent reality, with political commentators openly discussing the possibility of a leadership contest.